X, your source for Warhammer Underworlds and under 30 cards that you wish you had in your Grand Alliance. I'm your co-host, Davy. As with me as always, sometimes from another Grand Alliance, is my co-host, Phil. How are you, Phil?
Hey, doing pretty good.
Good to hear. We are recording this. We are just about 4 weeks till ACON. Getting to crunch time. I swear I've decided what I'm bringing. Not really.
Yeah, I keep telling myself that.
Yeah. And on top of that, I have like a big annual getaway thing. It's usually earlier in the year, but so right in between, I've got a big game thing, but it's not Underworlds oriented. So that's kind of blowing up any painting and planning. It's going to be super fun, but I'm going to come back from that and be like, oh my God, it's now. So, we are going to talk about Grand Alliance specific cards today, what we think of those cards, what we think of the idea in general, and where we think it might go to. But we have a little more context to cover. Any news? Any notable news that came out today?
Yeah, just a certain little friend that we got to see. There's really putting the screws to us here, trying to make sure that we don't know about these guys too much yet. But yeah, so we got this zombie for the next coming warband, and
just a run of the mill zombie.
Yeah, just with a gigantic like Frankenstein on arm with crazy like bolts stuck in it. I don't.
Yeah,
like looking at the art that they had for him, it was like, okay, somehow he's like channeling electricity along the bolts.
Yeah,
but I don't understand like where, how. Like I don't like they just are just stuck in his arm. I don't get it. But
there's some background about the Arcano electric force that happens to be everywhere in the mortal realms. So who knew?
Yeah, the force,
but I'll say this: like
all around us.
I've been, I've been kind of hoping for a zombie warband for a while, and I'm down with a different take on it.
Yeah,
and this guy's got a name. What was it Crowl?
Yeah, something like that. I probably should have made sure to remember what it actually was.
Coil. Oh, I get it.
Yes,
all right.
Yeah, there you go.
But I'll say this: I'm low key appreciative that this guy's got a name. There might be some generics, but it's kind of fun to have names on people. Like they did it with Grimwatch, kind of titles and stuff like that. But with earlier Undead Warbands, you had like the Chain Rasps and the Petitioners, and there's not that many guys, so just give them all names. It's fun, and less confusing. It's better design. But what do you think? Is this a warband that's just going to be unique to Underworlds, or do you think this is somehow going to bleed into the greater Age of Sigmar?
I kind of think it might be like the Kurnoth, where you don't really see anything in regular Age of Sigmar, just because it's like such an out there idea.
Yeah,
I feel like, I don't know. I don't feel like the Death book is old enough yet for them to want to be like putting something new out, and having this be like a whole separate faction would be insane because Death already has a ton of stuff. But they definitely need like more diversity in zombies, so I wouldn't be like upset about it. But
now you can have your branch zombies, I don't know,
like
tree zombies from from Curse City, and your electro zombies from Harrowdeep. So I don't know, not a lot more to be said about that. I think that explains the little lightning icon we saw, and
sure does.
It definitely points in the direction of some themes that they can do, charging up and arcing. I bet you're going to be able to splash damage around, or getting groups of these guys together, like, maybe not even like a supporting mechanic, but maybe if they're base to base with each other, they can get more power. I don't know. There's all kinds of things, all kinds of ways it could go. But I'm old and jaded, so anytime there's something kind of novel, it's fun. So I'm excited to see what they do with this. Any more thoughts on that?
I just hope that it's a smaller death warband again. I think the
Mm,
4 to 5 fighter range would be nice.
sure.
The first couple that we had were so like just massive. It's like,
Yeah.
let's keep it keep it down.
Settle
And
down.
I think it's just kind of better for the balance of the game in general to have not gigantic warbands. Like 7+ is
Mm.
kind of hard to manage, it seems. So
I
um
yeah, I agree, but what the last seven fighter warband we had was all the way back to Grimwatch, right? Um,
true.
we've had some Sixers, we had uh, Canaan's Reapers. So I'd
Yeah.
just be curious to see I mean, I know they've done their undead hordes plenty, but
Yeah.
if they can find another way to do it, cool. And I bet they do.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be kind of nice to see another raise mechanic if they can find a way to make it make sense.
Mm,
Um, necromancer zombie thing has sort of always been a big deal in Age of Sigmar and going all the way back to fantasy. So if they wanted to do that again, I think it would make sense. But um, I don't know. Maybe they're leaning away from the revive stuff.
got any community shout outs? Anything you've had a chance to read or check out?
Nothing that I've actually had a chance to read, although I really do want to go and check out Flavius's additional posts about hex placement.
Mm,
I meant to get back to it, but I just haven't had the time.
yeah.
So seems
Well,
like people have reacted well to it, though. So I'm excited to go
yeah.
see it.
A little behind the curtain. We're recording this on a Monday. This will get released on Saturday, and it looks like
Mm.
Flavius is maybe looking to do Sunday drops. Maybe he had some sentences
Mm.
kind of implied that. So might try to put it on your regular thing to go take a peek over there on Sundays.
Yeah.
I have a real strong recommendation for you. This is the Determined Effort blog. It's been quiet for a while, but it's
Mm.
back out with an article called, I think he called it Illusory Find. This is incredible. This is like exactly, I don't know, like I got really excited reading this. Um, it is a super deep dive on one particular build, and what the author does is, uh, I want to leave most of it for the reader, but takes a look at what if we take this. You and I talked a couple episodes ago about the um, Illusory Might deck,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and this is basically making a championship version of that is what I'd roughly
Mm.
say. And this is kind of the in-depth thing that blogs can be perfect for. So it goes into the like, how did he pick this warband? He ends up picking Wormspat. Why that warband? Why not something else? And uh, into that, the deck itself, the breakdown of all, why these cards are picked, and then a whole bunch of matchups with notes about each of those matchups. Like, I had this kind of record against this warband. I had this. Uh, it is a well researched article, and I strongly recommend it as an experiment. I think he says right there that no promises that this is going to be a world beater deck or anything like that, but it's the idea of like, what if we take this idea to its logical extreme? Like, where can we land on it?
Yeah.
And I thought it was really great stuff. And so it'll be linked in the show notes here, and you should absolutely go check it out.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. And then
That.
I guess my other one is Path to Glory. I had another episode out that kind of talk about the status of the current meta. Um, they bring in Compaq, the new person at the helm of Bolts at the tempo and running the Discord Vassal now, or Vassal
Mm.
Discord.
Yeah.
Um, but there's some conversation there, and that's useful if you happen to be prepping for, I don't know, a grand clash coming up,
Yeah.
to get some of those thoughts. There's one part where Jason Murray specifically says, he's talking about like, yeah, you can do these main things, or like, who knows? Like, people haven't been playing in a long time. You could be the mad scientist that like brings something crazy and figures it out. And I was like, he's talking directly to me. So, uh, And I had to like shake my head, like, no, like don't
don't
put
don't be
down the Forest
tempted.
Riders. It's okay. So we'll see how much that grabs hold. But they also, I think didn't mention this before. They have a segment called "Sleeve It or Leave It," which I think is great and really kind of want to steal, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
but it's someone will write in and say, "Hey, what about this card?" Or they'll suggest it themselves. And they just take a look at a one off card and say, "What do we think of this card?" And it could be any card from, I think, Championship play.
Hmm.
I will lodge a vote for they eventually made it Sleeve It or Leave It. It originally was conceived as Sleeve It or Heave It, which I think is way better. So
Yes.
Sleeve It or Heave It. Anyway, hats off to the fellows over at Path to Glory. Uh, Still some real interesting listening. So that's what's going on with other people. What the heck is going on with you, Phil?
Yeah. Continuing to crush it.
Mm.
Practicing crushes with the intent to stay focused and actually bring them to Adepticon. I was a little worried after the first outing that I had with them. Made some adjustments, pretty much took out all the flex, just was like, if I'm gonna, sometimes you just gotta smash. And it went a lot better second time around.
All
I
right.
only got to play Skylar, who was one of our local guys who was also playing a Greenskins. He was using the Mad Mob, and sort of knew going into it that that's a pretty tough matchup for him.
Yeah.
Um, and he seemed to feel like he learned a lot of good lessons out of it, but it felt, I could tell that it was not a very even match.
Yeah. I can tell you after some conversations later with him, it left a lasting impression on him that game.
Oh
So
yeah, okay.
yeah. So
Hopefully not a sour one.
I mean, in the same way, like anytime you get a big beatdown
Well, yeah,
from a matchup, you start wondering like, oh, do I
I'm
have
still
everything in place? Like, did I?
worried. Yeah.
And it's a fair point. Like, figure out like, am I at a scrap it and start again, or am I, or were there just really big lessons to be learned
Yeah.
out of that, or what makes me, because you can't always, you're not going to win every game, but
Oh no,
you
of
should be able
course.
to keep them. You A lot of times you can say at least like, how could I have kept that close? Like, how did that get so out of hand?
Mm-hmm.
And usually those big blowouts, either it was just like ridiculous insane luck, or there was some like fundamental like misunderstanding of what your play needed to be, like what your strategy needed to be. So
Yeah.
I hope you guys get a chance to talk it over some. But he's been doing a lot of thinking about that deck. Those guys, I'm excited to see our crew kind of run around down there in Adepticon and see what they can do.
Mm-hmm.
I think as players, the group is going to represent Madison pretty well. I'm pretty excited to be cheering everybody on. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I definitely know the feeling of the sudden like dread of a blowout loss when I got absolutely annihilated by your purifiers.
yeah.
Which, speaking of, what is going on with you?
Still purifying, honestly. Trying not to let the siren call of the mad science take me. I keep building other decks, but I had a really good match with Dread Pageant. Nice classic matchup for the purifiers
Hmm.
uh, with
Yeah.
Brian, who's made some great refinements to his deck. And I don't want to tip anyone off to his tech or anything like that, but I definitely had. I think he and I each had a moment in the game where it was like, okay, that was real bad for me. Uh, let's see if I can avoid panicking, stay the course, and see where I can go with this. And so I think I've said it before. I think every time uh, Brian and I are playing, it ends up being kind of a real brain burner for me again because of all those Dread Pageant cards
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I think that's just a great warband, and I might be taking them if one of our other locals wasn't already doing it. So, but yeah, that's where I'm at now. I think I probably have to commit to those purifiers and then get them painted. I have to commit to something and get it painted at least. So,
For sure.
yeah. But what do you say we jump into it here? A lot of
Yeah.
rambling here.
Let's deep dive into the alliances.
Yeah. So Grand Alliance specific cards. This is something that we kind of wanted to do for a little while. It's something new to this season. I think the idea that things could have a Grand Alliance is not fully unique. There was like an alternate play thing that was out in a White Dwarf about the avatars or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, that kind of mentioned some of that idea. But this is the idea that is familiar to anyone who plays the larger Age of Sigmar, uh, that any army in that game is assigned to a Grand Alliance, um, which isn't to say that those alliances are inviolable. Like they there's plenty of infighting.
Yep.
So nobody should take it as like, oh, well, if I'm death and this guy's death, then we really shouldn't be fighting. Like, nah. Even order and order fight each other, but order, chaos, destruction, and death, kind of the four uh, main things, and they're being applied here in Underworlds, specifically with Grand Alliance specific cards. Um, so we're going to take a look at those cards. We're going to talk a little bit about what we think of the concept. We're going to go through some of the cards specifically and how they represent that, and then probably a little talk about where what we might think the future holds for these. So it'll be a little bit fluid back and forth between all those, but just kind of where it sits in the game right now. So,
Yeah.
Phil,
Mm-hmm.
let's just start with it. What do you think of the count? Like, why do you think we're doing this? Why do you think Games Workshop decided to work with some Grand Alliance specific cards? Was it just for novelty? Was it for a different reason? Obviously, it's just speculation on our part. But
Yeah.
and then what do you think? Was it a good idea, bad idea? Lay me out your broad thoughts about it.
So my guess is that we know that they had experimented a couple of times with introducing supplemental faction cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they kind of like the idea of being able to be like, here's supplemental material for a specific faction to try and address, like, here's more options. We'll seed more stuff that's like not just the universals, because universals, there's the problem that, hey, if you make a good universal for this one warband, chances are you've made it a good universal for a whole bunch of warbands.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it becomes difficult to continue to try and support specific warbands because, I mean, one, they just let them go out of print very quickly, and then also like you just would have to be making so many cards, that my guess is that they realized that they needed some other mechanic to be able to introduce limited cards into the format, and Grand Alliances work very well to do that because it then segments all of the warbands into discrete categories where they can be like, we know that this type, that most of the warbands of this Grand Alliance are of this type, so then we're going to build cards that sort of work to that strategy, and you can add specific and potentially flavorful effects directly into those warbands without affecting the entirety of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I think I was thinking of the term as kind of like a gated design space, right? So like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, if there's some things like destruction doesn't have a monopoly on the big guys, but they have most of them, right?
They sure do.
They've got both ogres, they've got the troll, they've got crushes, um, and so outside of them, there's Canaan, you know, it,
Yeah.
and so it's a thing where if you continue with like just a pure universal pool, then any card you make that would be broken by a big guy, it'll be broken as long as that universal is tough to create if Molag is available in the game, or any of these more recent big fellas. But if you were to instead say put that in uh, a order, well, order doesn't have that big bruiser really. Sometimes everyone will lean some way for turreting up somebody, like whatever the Voltron thing,
Yeah.
but it doesn't bust in the same way as it might for those. So it makes some cards available that wouldn't be otherwise. And as we come across some of those, we may point them out as we discuss them. But um, to your point, it's as more warbands come out, this I think this becomes more of a necessary thing. So this might have been like almost a necessary evolution, right?
Yeah.
Um, because like think about season one, if they designed, hey, this card is for destruction only, and you'd be like, oh, you mean Iron Jaws? Because
Yeah.
Iron Skulls boys, because that's the only destruction we have right now. Same with death at that time, so it wasn't really a point to doing that. You would have just been making some more faction specific cards. You'd eventually grow into other things, but now we're at a point where that is if not necessary, it certainly has to make it a little easier on the designers. Because like now if you drop a universal card, you have to say like how this has to interact with what, like 36, I don't know, 39,
Yeah.
39 war bands, something insane. Um, but if you can limit it down, like okay, like instead of having to think about how this card interacts with 39 different war bands, let's just think about how this card interacts with 9 warbands or 10 warbands or something like that, and that is
Yeah.
a lot more feasible than doing it all. So um, I think we talk a lot about the why and the is it out of necessity. How do you feel about what its impact has been? Like, do you feel how do you feel like it's been in practice? I guess.
Yeah. I think so far, outside of a very specific few war bands, I don't think that there's a lot of use of the cards. I think they're all fairly well designed, um, to the point where a lot of the universals are just better, and so you see a lot of war bands take universals instead.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and of course, like I said, that is, you know faction and warband specific, but I'd say the vast majority of the cards are cool, thematic, and have at least a use,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not like hugely powerful. So far, I don't think we've really seen much of an impact. But we are also very early in this season, so there's not that many of these cards to even pick from.
Sure. I mean, there's literally each Grand Alliance currently has 12. They each have 4 objectives, 4
Yeah,
upgrades, 4 gambits. They got uh, if you just look at the gaps in the cards, you can expect one more of each in this final uh, electric slide zombie warband coming our
yeah,
way. Um, so they'll close out the season on 15 each. Um, and so even if you think away that universals are often at like there's in reality, if you're talking purely for championship play, there's a relative low percentage of any universal pool that's being used. I think one almost unintended, well, I don't know, one side effect of this is, as we've talked about a number of times, the universal pool is currently small because it's the start of a season, and also small because of the effects of hunger and primacy limiting what's truly universal. Um,
yeah,
and by including these, we've actually further limited the universal pool. So what that effect is I think those of us trying to build decks are feeling quite a squeeze right now. Like there just isn't a whole lot to pick from, and it's because of all these. Uh, this just being one of them. The fact that of our universal pool, while there's 12 that are in our Grand Alliance, that means that they're, you know, barring the next expansion, we're looking at 36 more universals that we can't get access to because they land in a different Grand Alliance.
yeah. And while that limitation has certainly been something that I've personally felt like, well, I'm building decks, I'm like, why are there no good cards to pick from? I think it's probably been for the better. I feel like it's hard to know what's really strong right now, and
Hmm.
I think that's probably a good thing.
Sure.
I mean, we'll see if that continues to hold,
Yeah.
but it definitely makes for interesting games where you
Sure.
never really feel like you've got a guaranteed win or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we had a pretty aggressive restricted list. I think the last FAR was pretty
Yeah,
aggressive as far as including things, including a lot of things, and including things earlier than they might have, and being pretty limited on what got dropped off. So um, even on what is available, some of those choices are further limited. And you're saying, like, I think it's a good thing. My take is, I don't think it's good or bad. I think it is, right. Like, it's,
sure.
you know, uh, you're making a deck in this world, so this is gravity for now. So can't do anything about it. Better deal with gravity. So there.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, I I have noticed a couple things with it. One is it's had some effect on, like, familiarity with cards, because if you've been building decks with just a couple of war bands, maybe even both the war bands you were building with were in the same Grand Alliance or something like that, then you're not looking at those other ones. And so what I'm finding is, like, oh, like, somebody will play a card from a Grand Alliance from a deck I haven't been building with. And I'm like, I actually don't know what that does. Like,
yeah.
I haven't been looking at that. So you're gonna have to help me out. What exactly does this do? So I that's pretty by the by, but that's something I noticed. And then also that it's a chance for them to kind of reinforce some ideas of, like, what does it mean to be part of a Grand Alliance. We'll see a little bit of that. It's not like a hard and fast, but I I don't know if you agree, but I think you could look at some of these and say, yeah, in general, there's some tendencies with these. They're saying, like, this Grand Alliance is kind of about this thing, and we're going to
Yeah,
choose to reinforce that. And again, not hard and fast, but you know that's also true in the past. Like, if you said which Grand Alliance is about raising fighters, you say, well, Death, obviously, but they don't
yeah,
actually have they don't have a monopoly on that. You got Skaven doing it, and even Soul Raid a little bit. So,
for sure.
but those are kind of the broad things with it. You want to talk? It's not a super exciting breakdown of that, but we did take a look at what's out there right now as far as what kind of gambits, upgrades, surges, and that sort of thing. You want to talk that in broad terms, and then get into, you can pick a Grand Alliance, and we'll dig into it.
Sure, might as well. Should we start at chaos? I feel like chaos, at least to me, I feel like chaos is maybe maybe aptly the least focused of these.
Sure. Um,
Um,
yeah. What if you were to try and find some themes in there? What did you notice um, in there?
yeah, so I guess I kind of feel like they're leaning a bit on the aggro side.
Mm,
Um, but like I said, it's kind of this weird mix. So like you've got you've got things like the objectives All Too Real and Path to Chaos,
okay.
which are respectively a friendly fighter's upgrade attack action takes a target out of action, or a friendly fighter's successful illusion attack action takes a fighter out of action.
Well, I
Or
think it
no,
just
just
has to
a
be.
successful attack
Yeah.
with an illusion. So
Yeah.
that, but so like, okay, we're making attacks. Or Path to Chaos, 3 or more friendly fighters are in enemy territory, or 2 or more enemy fighters are out of action. Yeah, okay. Very aggressive. But then you have Generous Blessings, which is 1 or more friendly fighters each have 3 or more upgrades.
Hmm.
And then the other side of that is that if you have 1 or more surviving friendly Nurgle fighters, and enemy fighters have 3 or more wound counters, which is their inspire thing. So
Yeah.
it's, I think you sort of get this idea that, okay, generally chaos is aggressive, but then they're also focused on, like, each of the gods is kind of mixed in here. They have some flavor for most of them, and then there's like maybe blessings or something. Like I can't quite uh put a finger on it, but it's like we're trying to do something here that feels like chaos gods.
Sure. Well, I mean, just as a small thing, they there's a couple of mutations in there. Um,
Yeah,
so that's something, and that is a thing that the background of Age of Sigmar and 40k does, is like chaos provides these gifts, but they are, mutations. So they're kind of horrific changes that are, quote unquote blessings. Um, I thought that was a cool touch. So you got a new keyword, like we've seen in the past with, whatever metaliths and stuff like that. So we got
Yeah.
mutations. It currently doesn't mean anything other than it's cool. But a mutation in general means that it's some kind of generic upgrade. I think right now we have an equivalent of great fortitude and great speed, but it can be given for free if you take somebody out of action. Um,
Yeah.
so there's that, and then there's a little bit of a illusion interaction. Like you mentioned, there was the all too real. Just successfully making an attack with an illusion is pretty decent if you're building towards that. There's some pretty accurate illusion attacks there,
Mm-hmm.
as we saw with the phantom darts, spear, and fists. All those are either throwing a lot of dice or getting a lot of chances to attack because of range or have cleave. So that's cool. And then there's a desperate bargain, I believe, has a little bit more interaction with illusions, and maybe not like a thing that you're gonna snap up or anything like that, but that one, let's see if I can find that.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Desperate
I got a
bargain. Okay, go ahead.
so it's a reaction gambit. So you play this when a friendly fighter is dealt damage after you check to see if they're out of action. So it's just making sure you can't play it if they're going to die. And then they have to be vulnerable. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't remember, vulnerable is a keyworded thing now where if you have just one wound remaining, so it's just shorthand for that, you then get to give the fighter one upgrade from your hand or one illusion upgrade from your discard pile.
I so I actually built a Godsworn deck that had this in there, with with a couple of like gross oversights. The first being, I totally forgot about inspiration steps. So I was like, yeah, this is gonna be
Yeah.
amazing. I'm gonna run through a lethal. I'm gonna, it'll be one of the two wounders, run through a lethal, become vulnerable, get an upgrade for free, inspire attack. Oh, it's perfect. And then thought about it a little bit more, like, no, I think the timing on this works such that you could on the fly give somebody an upgrade by charging through a lethal or some such, but they wouldn't inspire until after that activation. Like, well,
Correct.
then that's not so great. And also lethals are relatively rare compared to it's hard, man. Like building decks, I still imagine lethals being everywhere, as in the Beast Grave and Dire Chasm seasons.
Yeah.
So but yeah, so I there may be something here if you, probably not though, but if
I
you're working illusions or something.
Yeah.
But
So I mean, this is a bit of a tangent, but like the vulnerable mechanic just feels completely untenable to me. Like, how many times has it even ever come up for you?
yeah, exactly.
So I don't
Um,
know.
but point being, this plus the objective, there's a couple ways that they interact
Yeah.
with illusions. There's an upgrade that's an illusion. It's an awful illusion, Phantom Pain.
Oof.
Uh,
Yeah. No.
Extra range for -1 defense. There, I bet you. I mean, I think this is the kind of card that it's hard to imagine it going into something. Somebody may find a crazy deck down the line, depending on what comes out. Um, but yeah, probably not. But
Yeah.
point being, like mutations and that, I think uh, those are kind of our two themes. You talk about aggressive, and I think in general that's true. Do you have any? Do you have a couple of favorites from here that you'd call out?
I mean, I do like both the illusions. I think they're both good. Just generic upgrades. I mean, especially the gifted bulk. I think that one's
Mutations, you're
really
saying,
good.
not illusions.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
mutations.
yeah,
Um, I don't know. I don't really like any of their objectives all that much, but if you're going with the illusion route, all too real is an auto include at that point.
yeah. I mean, I think that's real strong with an illusion deck.
Yeah, which is probably, like you said, Nurgle gets picked for that deck in the
Yeah.
write ups, and it's probably part of the reason for it.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And I think illusions have a lot of like, my first reading of illusions was that they were going to be this sort of niche, like, yeah, that's cute, but it's not like that good because you're going to just have them get, discarded. But usually they work out better than you'd
Sure.
expect. And you
Yeah.
sort of get in this mindset of using them as gambits rather than as upgrades. And uh, I've been very happy with them every time I've played them. So,
Yeah. 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 Um, I'm with you on gifted bulk in particular. I'll be interested to see if there's anything that keys off of mutations, like
yeah.
coming forward. But I think I wasn't all that excited when I saw it because it's not a super exciting card, but Great Fortitude makes it into a lot of decks, and this is Great Fortitude with a little extra
Mm-hmm.
thing that makes it better. And if you might presume that if they're going to do one more mutation, that it might be a great strength with a reaction. This is the one that you want to have as a reaction because
Yep.
something like extra damage or extra speed, you kind of want that before you make your charge, before you make your kill. This is a real nice one if you like. Hey, um, they left a dangle bro up front. They left a 2-wound fighter. I can pick that person off, get some seed glory. If you manage to make the kill, then you can give yourself some extra protection by putting this mutation on for free, and then retain the spare glory either to put another defensive upgrade on or throw a speed boost on somebody else. So
Yeah.
I think this is a card that's going to see plenty of play in chaos decks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, people take plus wounds all over the place. So there's
Sure.
almost no reason not to have this. I mean, if
Yeah.
somebody just said to me, you can just have an extra great fortitude, I'd be like, okay, I'll run 2 great fortitudes.
Sounds cool.
I think the only other one of their cards that's interesting to me is Chaotic Paths.
Mm.
So this is Gambit that they have. You pick an enemy fighter with no, well, specifically you choose. So
Hmm.
there's a thing there. You choose an enemy fighter with no move or charge tokens, um, and then the player you chose, so the player of the fighter you chose, has to pick either to deal 1 damage to the fighter or that they have to you get to scatter 3 from that fighter's hex and push the fighter along the chain. And then of course they have this standard text of like, if for some reason you can't push them, then they just stop.
Yeah.
But either way, that can definitely, like, if somebody's like, I need to be on this objective, and then you're like, well, there you go, here's a fun choice for you.
Sure.
I think that could be pretty useful. I do think that the limitation of no move or charge tokens can be a little rough though.
Yeah. Especially so because what it means is that if they choose to opt for the scatter instead, it means they still have a move or charge to
Yeah.
bring them back into position. So
Yeah.
I think it'll be, I think it's worth playing around with. I think it probably ends up getting cut. I am surprised as a longtime Vortimus player that you didn't mention Agonizing Bolt.
Well,
Uh,
it's not that I don't appreciate that there is a Zinch specific spell. I just don't know how good it is.
Got it. So this one is goes off on a single focus. If cast, choose one enemy fighter within 3 hexes of the caster or within 4 hexes of the caster if the caster is a Zinch fighter. Deal 1 damage to the chosen fighter or 2 damage to the caster. Suffered backlash. I actually forgot about that last backlash caveat. Not that it would come up all that often. Although it wouldn't unless, I mean, we have seen before ways to manufacture like, I think maybe Zarbag has something where he can increase his power and increase his chance of backlash. But point being, ping damage is really rare right now in the game. Like it is hard to come by. There was a time where it was all over the place, but not so much. And 4 hexes is a pretty reach out and touch you. So right at the start of Harrowdeep, I did have a eyes deck. It wasn't amazing, but I definitely had this in there as a cool thing. It is. Yeah, I'll say it's a nice thing to have in your back pocket if you're fighting Cunning Crew.
Oh, I bet.
Who skin of their teeth, and then you're like, well, all right, I have something for that. So,
and ping you for one.
But this is I think this is a good example to bring up that idea we talked about, compartmentalizing your design space. let's go back in time and pretend that they had Grand Alliance cards back in Night Vault.
Oh yeah.
Because here's the problem in Night Vault. You were looking, you're saying, oh man, like if with just a few more spells, Vortimus could really maybe make some stuff happen. But they come out, they'd be universal, and they get restricted because Vortimus was collateral damage for Curse Breakers.
Every single time you'd be
Yeah,
like, this is
exactly.
great for Vortimus. And like, yeah, you think it's great for Vortimus.
So you lock this behind a Grand Alliance, and all of a sudden you can work with it a little bit more. So
yeah,
but exciting potential there is my take. So
yeah, I would
go ahead.
Like, I really like Magic in the game, but I feel
Yeah.
like they really have shied away from it.
Sure.
I would rather it, like, if you're not going to have a way to score glory off of casting spells, which right now I don't think is really very viable. Maybe if you're playing Curse Breakers, but even then it feels rough. Like, if you're going to make it where you really are only sprinkling these in, since you have to roll for it, I feel like they should push it more. Like, make it do more.
Yeah.
Because, like, cards that don't work all the time need to do something.
Sure.
Like, good. And given that there's a 40% chance that this card does nothing, not guaranteed. No, with Vortimus would be better than that, but still.
Yeah, he's got a 75% chance to hit on this thing.
Yeah.
But
1 damage at 75% does not feel like enough to me. I feel like if you're going to make Vortimus do stuff like that, you need a better reason to be doing it.
I mean, and that reason is going to be that you have myriad incantations in your deck. Scores if you have the most game, but like there's ways you can capitalize off of having this sort of thing. That faction does have stuff for casting multiple spells. That's kind of the reason spells can get away with doing some things that are. But yeah, I mean, we're coming down on slightly different levels of desire for this thing, but I think it's the kind of card that is interesting to have in these Grand Alliance things. So,
and it's very flavorful. Like, I think they did a good job with hitting the flavor on all of these that are like Nurgle, Tzeentch, Corrin, specific. I think that's good, and I'd like to see more of that. I think.
Sure. Let me hit you with this. We got 5. I'm gonna blank. We should have 3 more. We have 3 more. Probably 1 objective, 1 upgrade, 1 gambit coming. Any predictions for what we might see?
Well, like you said, there's probably another mutation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it'll exactly be just +1 damage.
Yeah,
it would sort of fit, but it would kind of feel powerful. I think
it'd be insane to have an extra like
an extra great strength.
Yeah, like Weapons Master is that one that came out in Illusory Might, which is great strength, but only if you have 3 upgrades on.
Right. Yeah.
A whole Grand Alliance having access to 2 great strengths, I would be startled if they chose to do that.
Yeah,
but
it'd be very strong.
I'm with you. I think another mutation probably.
And then maybe we see an objective that pays off for having mutations.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if a fighter has 2 or more mutations or something, you score 1 glory in an end phase. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Make it like the ones that have 3 upgrades, but instead it's only 2 because they're mutations specifically.
Yeah.
In terms of gambits, I don't know. Like, they could do anything.
Sure. I'm gonna guess. I'm with you on all those, and I'm gonna guess one of these coming out will have some Slaanesh specific bump. Yeah. That's the only Chaos God that doesn't get a specific call out so far in these ones. So, not going out on a crazy limb here, but that's what we're seeing. I like something you said, like the flavor is great, and Chaos has that extra. So we talked about a little bit of illusions, mutations, and then it's almost like mini Grand Alliances within their Grand Alliances for the for those. So, and we've seen that elsewhere too, where there's the upgrade that turns somebody into a spellcaster.
Yep.
Or it's a bound bolt spell. And corn fighters can't take it, and so I'm a fan of them. As people who listen to our other podcasts know, we're big fans of the lore, and so I like seeing that bleed in. There's a reason I don't play this with paper, paper cutouts or whatever. It's because
Yeah,
it's got a cool background. But
sure does.
that's the take on chaos. Well, how about you want to go death next?
Yeah, let's go to death. We can
Okay,
chat about some dead boys.
sure. You see a theme with these?
Um, I don't know if there's really a theme with these ones all that much either. I do know that we definitely have the strongest of, or at least in my opinion, we have the strongest infection card in death.
Yeah,
Um, which is
you
probably
could
why
only
it's
be speaking
restricted.
out partial resurrection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
yeah, I see them doubling down on the resurrection theme. So they've got stuff that obviously, uh, what we're talking about there is partial resurrection. Place one friendly fighter that is out of action on a starting hex in your territory. Give them a raise token. Give that fighter wound counters until that fighter is vulnerable. Um, so lean into that. There's some more that plays with that, like Reborn in Darkness, where if you give someone a raise token, place that fighter in a cover hex. That was a
mhm.
little weird because it basically only interacts with Sepulchral Guard, right? Because none of the other ones
Yeah.
actually give raise counters when they come back, but it is still plays with that mechanic. Uh, I thought there was a surprising amount of combat stuff in here,
There
like
is a good amount of it. Yeah.
attack oriented objectives. Traditionally, like we always used to think about in the early days about death warbands being, yeah, we're going to wander around and stand on stuff. Not so much according to these Grand Alliance cards.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like some of the in-faction sepulchral guard cards where it was
Mm,
like took two fighters out of action in a single round. It's like,
yeah.
when did that ever happen?
Yeah. um, what, yeah. So
I
I agree on that. I think it was just interesting to see some of these, because Sepulchral Guard are really, 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 really light on surges. I think they might only have skills Unforgotten, which is the warden's got to kill somebody.
yeah,
And
which
so I was
is a
like,
little
oh, cool,
rough.
surges in here. Death's Champion. Score this immediately after leader's attack action. Take target. I'm like, oh, damn it. I already have
Yeah.
that. Come on.
Yeah.
Um,
Feel I almost wonder like each of the death factions feels very different. Like
mhm.
they kind of all have similar things that they do. They're all larger war bands. They all kind of can hold objectives to a certain degree. Canaan's Reapers are obviously much more aggressive,
Yeah,
but like it makes it harder to design a faction specific set that's going to work well for all of them because they all do such different things. And then of course the vampires are like way out
yeah,
there on left field. Like they're very aggressive. They do hunger, which of course is not seen anywhere here. So,
sure.
um,
Yeah, you got vampires, you got Mournflight, and you got Wraith Creepers are these weird four fighter warbands that are pretty excited to see a card like Partial Resurrection, so they can get in
yeah,
on that. Um, this is another great example of compartmentalizing your design space. You could never print a gambit like Partial Resurrection and make it a global universal. Like
no,
just
oh, it would be
just
awful.
insane. Yeah, too much to like try and wrap your head around. They did a smart thing by making it restricted to having your leader in play. So if the leader goes down, this is a
Hmm.
dead card and
Yeah,
therefore can't be used on the leader. But still, um, I think that obviously it got restricted and people may grumble about that card, but I like it. I like it being in there. I like that it will rotate. I think, the real question is how how powerful is it in those four fighter war bands? Um, I don't think is a much of a problem in something like Grimwatch or Sepulchral Guard. Like the chance for them to double down on that is pretty cool
yeah,
idea. It's strictly worse than what a Raised Dead. I don't,
yep, yeah. The Infaction Sepulchral Guard card is just straight better,
but
uh,
having two of that is
yeah,
pretty,
it's pretty spicy.
yeah. So, um, yeah, I just want to kind of, I know people have talked a lot about that, but with that take on it, what, uh, what else? Do you have any notables or favorites that you want to point out here?
Um, So I think we sort of mentioned that the objectives are, most of them are fairly aggressive. Lurking Death is for standing on cover hexes,
Yeah.
which is nice. I do. It's not really a notable card in that it's like something that I'm like, ooh, I really want to play this. But I like that they keep, we're seeing some experimentation in the mechanics this season, and Plunder the Graves is a
Mm.
gambit that continues to do that. And so this is, you shuffle your power discard pile face down, draw the top card, and return it to your hand. So you're getting one power card back from your discard pile at random.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of have to have a lot of powerful, uh, power cards to really
Hmm.
want to use this. But if you know that there's like one or two cards that are just backbreaking in your warband, you can play this in situations where there's like one or two cards in your discard pile, and you have a very good chance of getting back exactly what you need.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so I kind of like that.
Yeah. And once again, I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but it helps to gate this. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it'd be kind of crazy if you could. I mean, not broken, but it'd be kind of crazy to do this with like Farstriders, where they got the Raptor Strike, the reach out and
Yeah,
do one damage to
a
somebody
little
four
ping.
way, then play this, pick it back up,
Yeah.
do it again, just have two unstoppable damage. I was thinking of other goofy stuff. I mean, again, thematics, right? Like the place we've seen this before, outside of some weird spells that didn't really get used, is recycled riches out of Grimwatch that lets them
Mm-hmm.
dig back up a faction specific power card. Um, this is, I was thinking like, what if you had this and so you dig, plunder the graves, accidentally draw recycled riches, and go back in. Just
Get it
spend an
again.
inordinate amount of time digging through your discards and,
I'm gonna get
and
the one I
grabbing
want. Dang
stuff,
it.
shuffling stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I it's hard to for sure think of a deck that uses this, but I think again the gated design space is important, and then just see where it comes. For me, you mentioned in passing, you mentioned Lurking Death. I think that's pretty significant because this is a two glory end phase, and as we've seen, they're a little bit few and far between, especially of the
It's true.
non-restricted, non-combat variety.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this does require you to get into enemy territory, but it only requires one. Um, and so I think Grimwatch are
Yeah.
particularly interested in this one because they end up raising somebody up back in enemy territory, and they kind of don't care if like, oh well, because as it reads, two or more friendly fighters are each in a cover hex. One or more of those fighters are in enemy territory. But after you score it, your opponent gets to pick someone and pick one of your fighters to take one damage if they're in a cover hex. It doesn't have to be one of the two that you're counting on. So you have to be a little careful. Make sure Duke is not standing back on
Yeah.
cover hex and accidentally blows his protection by getting hurt like that. But you can work around this. If you have someone you don't want to get pinged, you can delve at the
Just,
right time
yeah.
and all that sort of
Don't
thing.
have them
So
in there.
I think this has to be in consideration for people who are designing this sort of deck that cares about feature tokens. You at
Oh
least need to
yeah,
think
for
about it.
sure.
So, and
Um,
I think coup de grace, this surge scored immediately after an attack action that took an enemy fighter out of action if that fighter had one or more wound counters and then declare it to action step. Um, it's not broken by any means, but it's one that's doable, that in a way that doesn't depend on a particular fighter being alive, right? Like,
yeah, that's
um,
true.
and I think quite a few of those death warbands are in a position where they're not necessarily one shotting people. There's exceptions, but you think about like early vampires early on, they've got fair accuracy, but they're doing two a pop, so they're trying to stack. So this is
Hmm.
something that works well for them and others. So
Yeah, and sort of
um,
going the opposite direction of primacy, right? So you're kind of
mhm.
rewarding for actually taking the opportunity to hit someone multiple times rather than just I'll stack all the plus strength stuff and then
Yeah.
blow everything apart in one hit.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, anything else you wanted to mention?
So I mean, they've got an interesting number of accuracy modifiers,
Yeah.
stuff that's giving ensnare and or cleave, which we don't see as much anymore, which is
Hmm.
actually interesting. It's something I noticed recently that it's like, hey, cleave is pretty rare to see anymore outside of some weapon upgrades and stuff.
Mm.
And I feel like it's with the amount of going on guard, it's becoming more valuable again. Like there was a
Sure.
while there where everything was just about let's stack all the dodge, you know. Um, and I feel like the number of dice has come back down for defense on the whole, and we're relying a little more on uh, guard for getting improved defense. And having cleave is useful, but it's just not around as much anymore.
Yeah, I
So
think you're specifically referring to Swooping Shadow as a good example here, and this is a
yeah,
gambit
um,
that first attack and the next activation has ensnare. Not great. You're probably taking determined effort before that, but if
yeah,
that fighter has flying or is a hunter, then it also has cleave, and all of a sudden that I was running
yeah.
some of the numbers on that, especially into like 2 dice on guard people. You are looking at
It's yeah, it's
it's
rough.
like a 20, sometimes as much as like a 24-25% buff to your chances to hit, depending on what you were
Very
rolling in
good.
the first place, and that is a huge bump.
Yeah,
So
and there's an upgrade that's got a similar effect as Life Seeker. So your range one attack actions on the fighter have cleave, which is we've seen that upgrade plenty of times. But if they're also an assassin, then they also have ensnare.
mm,
Um, so if you've got, I don't actually know who is an assassin in any of the Death Fighter warbands, but if you've got an assassin that needs an accuracy boost, boy, is this a good way to do it.
sure,
Cleave and ensnare just all the time. That is pretty nuts.
yeah. Um, so a curiously combat oriented set of
Yeah,
cards
yeah,
for death, but some gems in there. And I definitely think there's whatever your death faction is doing, there's at least a couple that you're going to be considering in there, whatever you're trying to do with it. Um, let's talk destruction.
Ooh, I
Um,
like these ones.
do you? All right.
I
Well,
think
tell me,
they're good.
did you see a theme on these?
Um, so they kind of have. So again, there's some aggressive stuff, but there's some like anti-objective pieces and support related stuff, which
Hmm.
is sort of interesting. Um, and it actually feels a little weird to me that destruction, which has some of the smallest or like least number of efficient fighters, is this the area where they were like, we'll go all in on support.
Yeah.
Um, but that being said, the Cunning crew really leaned into it really heavily, and the original Gabos they'd certainly like it too. So
Sure, but you know what? If you go all the way back to Iron Skull's boys, they actually had a weird number of cards that were for supporting, like
did they?
the old one
Hmm.
too. Yeah, there was more than you would have thought for a slow four fighter warband. Um, part of what gave them a struggle. They had uh, more than one or two in there that, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
So, um, as somebody who tried running what was essentially as close to their rivals deck as you could, I found myself having to try to work with those. So,
Yeah.
and I think the other theme I noticed on this was stagger comes up quite a few times.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Which I think is something we just, I don't know if, like, I kind of like it in theory, but I feel like it's just not around enough to really be able to take advantage of it yet.
Yeah,
So I'm hoping we see more of it.
it's a thing where most of the places I see it, it's where it's useful in combination with something else. Like uh, there's the card for the Cunning Crew. It's the push card,
Yep.
um, creeping doubt. I don't know. uh,
Yeah. I don't, I
edit
don't play them
incorrect card
enough.
name here. We push to the closest end stagger, and that was a good card because you not only would you set up your crazy supports in that warband, but if you got adjacent, you'd stagger. So it was ended up being like a positioning thing, but also a pretty notable accuracy boost
Mm-hmm.
if you could time it right. And so that's where I tend to see stagger the most. Like we're seeing a lot of Phantom Fists showing up. So it's coming up not as a main goal, but as a nice side effect of some things that you are. It's like a mechanic that's bringing things from like the yeah, this is okay to like yeah, I will include this on some things. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
the tipping point on a few cards.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I think the other thing that I like about these, and maybe this is actually not a good thing from a design standpoint, but a lot of these feel very generic in a sense,
Hmm.
which I think makes them easier to use. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I haven't actually found a good way to make it work yet, but the objective easy come, easy go feels
Oh,
very strong. We just don't have
tell
like
me
the
what it
right.
is.
so so this is an end phase for one glory, but it's scored in the end phase if you have no power cards in your hand. So
Mm,
if you just know that you're going to be able to play out all your cards, it's a guaranteed glory.
sure.
Um,
What if I told you there might be a deck that can go with this?
oh, I bet
It's
there is.
it's the illusion deck. I think
Well,
if you
right,
go
yeah,
right, like because you can almost guarantee you can empty your hand there. I,
yeah.
I again like we theorized about some of these like but yeah it's tough man. uh but it might be it might be that gosh what was the other one I thought was black powder. We talked about the kind of control build like
Yep.
maybe he's got daylight robbery, maybe he's got desperate bargain.
Yeah,
um
Desperate Bargain I think would be a
so
solid choice there
you can
if you
keep
wanted to
clearing
try
your
and play
hand
that.
out. Yeah.
Yeah.
um
But I like I was thinking about it and I was like when I was playing Hrothgorn,
yeah,
you know, back in the day,
yeah,
uh there were tons of times where I felt like I just burned through all the cards in my hand because
sure,
he could make perfect use of any ploys that you drew into. Is like, well, they're going to get used this turn.
yeah,
I'm not just sitting around waiting to use these ploys.
yeah.
And you oftentimes, because of how easy the glory was to come by, you could just stack all your upgrades. And like
Mm,
you didn't really have to worry about waiting to put them on because it's like, you know who they're going on.
mm,
You don't have to worry
mm,
about it.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It feels like some of these that it makes for easy options.
sure.
I,
It's a card that on its face, like I see why the thematics are there. Is like just recklessly using your power cards. That feels like a destruction thing to do, but
yeah,
it also it has the taste of a card that is a little bit feels like a bygone era. Like uh, we saw some of these. I think there was like uh, out of tricks or no tricks left or something like that.
yeah,
I,
that's
I I can't remember the exact name, but it definitely had like a Slayer looking pretty depressed on the art. uh, and it feels like the kind of card, like some of these that were for did you draw a certain number of times. It feels like the kind of card that can sometimes enable some of those like ultra passive decks. And so I'm a
hmm
little surprised. Like we haven't seen as many of them recently. I'm surprised that this still made it in. But
yeah,
again, I guess once it's trapped in a grand alliance and it limits how many could potentially use it. So
yeah. Oh, but like I said, I mean, like you could get some really passive scoring going with Hrothgorn, and it was mean, like to the
well,
point where
yeah,
you like, man, I
and
don't know.
and the
Uh,
guy who used to do it best was also in Destruction Mollog. So
yeah, that's true. You can
yeah,
just sort of sit around, score some glory, get going, and
yeah.
then smash face.
But
I
this
think
makes it things like we're big upping this card a little more than it probably
yeah,
deserves. But yeah,
we were
just
waxing a little nostalgic here, but I do I like I also really like scant rewards. Like you
hmm,
said, we
hmm,
have a sort of a dearth of two score end phases right now.
yeah,
And while this one is by no means guaranteed, if you know
yeah,
you're playing it though, you can build around it.
yeah,
So this one is a hybrid where either You score it with having no feature tokens in your territory and in no one's territory, which to me
Big
is
oof. Yeah.
literally almost impossible.
Yeah.
Like maybe if you've got token removal,
Yeah.
but man, that is hard. But then the other side is just there are no objective tokens.
Hmm.
That comes up a decent amount anymore nowadays. Like
Yeah.
there's
I,
obviously play against it, but like you can catch somebody out for this.
sure. It feels like a best of one card. It feels like a best of three. If you know you have to counterplay this, then it's not too hard to counterplay. But
True.
I think sometimes I overstate just how easy that is. Like I've definitely goofed up in this most recent game. I could have counterplayed. I suspected I had to look out for uh, another scant resources.
Yep.
And just totally like goofed up the timing on it. And I'm like, well, if he's got it, he's got it. Oh, he's got it. Okay, great.
All the objectives are held.
Yeah, yeah,
No objectives on the board. Like it's
yeah,
the kind of thing where I don't know.
yeah,
Um, if it was for one glory, it would be an absolute never take it. But for two, I think you can sort of maybe work towards it. And again, Hrothgorn's got that built-in faction token removal. So like, I don't know. If you really want to go that route, you could always just blow up objective tokens in your
sure.
opponent's territory or whatever.
Is that stuff still restricted? I don't remember. We'll have to. Somebody's shouting at me right now through the podcast.
um, but yeah. So and then I'll just the one more objective that I really like. I guess I could
Mhm.
just say that I don't like Path of Destruction, and maybe we could have shortened this. But the more the meaner. Like for the warbands that can take advantage of it, it's so easy because you don't have to succeed. You just make an attack that has two or
Yeah,
more supporting fighters. Like
yeah,
what?
yeah. The Cunning Crew are like, all right.
Yeah.
They'd be even more so if they didn't already have a clone of this in
Yeah,
their own.
well, right, but you
Yeah,
just run both, right? I mean, you're just like, okay, surges that are guaranteed glory, let's do it.
sure.
Um, I don't know. It's wild. I don't know that destruction needed the help really, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with the caveat is that I don't see a ton on here that really blows things open for the like the crushes or the like
It's true.
the more the meaner. Ripa's likes doing stuff with support, but
Yeah, not
it's
with
tough when
double.
there's only three of you, and some of their support stuff like bonded is now restricted, so that stuff got harder
It's
for
true.
them. Um,
Yeah, it may be that it's just like within each subsection. So like with the objectives or gambits or upgrades, it's like there's one or two things in each section where one warband is like, this is great.
mm,
And then the rest of them, they're like, actually, I can't really take advantage of this. But, um, it's like, I just think it's interesting because it
sure.
feels like you can find ways to make some of this stuff work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, I guess I didn't ask this for death, but it was more interesting for chaos. So maybe I'll leave off the what do you expect coming
hmm.
on these ones. I don't know that I have a lot that I could
No, probably not.
with with destruction. There's a little bit of upgrade breaking in here too,
There
which
is.
I guess you see a little bit of that in that's black powder bringing that to the mix. That's black powder's theme. So not that black powder would necessarily take that stuff, but the whole upgrade destruction stuff always like makes my brain start ticking over, and then I'm like, no, I can't figure out a way, or like it's so
Yeah,
hard. It's so hard to be like, yeah, I would rather break something of the other person's upgrades than do a thing myself. Like um,
it certainly feels like there's like if there's just one or two more things that support it, all of a sudden it could like
sure,
blow open. But right now, there's
yeah,
it's useful,
yeah,
but it's not something you really build around. I don't think.
yeah. All right. Well, only one Grand Alliance left, unless you've got anything else.
I think the only other thing that I find very interesting, but I haven't figured out who you put it on yet from Destruction, is Trogoth's Blood.
Mm.
It's an upgrade that you have to give to a fighter with a wounds characteristic of 4 or less. They become a hunter, and then every time you give them an upgrade, they heal 1.
Yeah.
I maybe like Mad Mob can take advantage of that. Because like you don't really put it on a small fighter, right?
Mm-mm.
But being able to heal 1 every time you upgrade a 4 wound fighter could be pretty useful.
I was building a Ripid deck and trying to decide if this would go in there. They do have a tendency to, narrow escape is a card that helps them
Yeah.
survive without having, and you do like to stack upgrades. I mean, you have to because there's only 3 of them. And
Yeah.
then inevitably I lose one in a stupid way. And then I'm like, well, I guess I putting all the upgrades on these other 2. Um, it's just a little slow, I think, but someone could prove me wrong. And of course you can always put it on and then, put it on and then also your next upgrade, which also heals, is a +1 wound or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, here's another thing that you could pair with illusions very well.
oh, I didn't think about that. Yeah. Cool.
It's a question of whether you need healing, but like there's a way to probably make that work.
Sure. And I guess if you think of it like this, sometimes I'm putting on an upgrade like Great Fortitude as okay, like they managed to push a fighter back into a lethal or something like that. And now all of a sudden there's only 3 health left on this guy. And, and then he's in killable range. So a lot of times I'm putting something to bring somebody back up out of killable range.
Mm-hmm.
This, as long as you get another upgrade on, it's almost like a Great Fortitude, right? If your fighter is wounded,
Yeah.
then this one, and then it means the next, if your next one was Great Fortitude, then this is effectively like a heal 1 +1 between the 2 of them. So it brings you
Mm-hmm.
2 up from where you were.
Yeah.
That starts looking pretty interesting.
I guess there's even the question, like, could you use the reaction on this upgrade after playing this upgrade? Because the trigger is after this fighter is given an upgrade. It's not very
Whoa.
clear to me.
I didn't even think about that.
I think my brain wants to say no, but like
Yeah.
I think technically probably works because you put the upgrade on, and as after the upgrade has gone on,
Yeah.
you now have the window, and you would trigger in that window. So maybe,
Huh.
but
Interesting.
So I don't know.
Maybe.
It's like I said, I don't know if there's anything you can do with it right now, but it's something that I definitely am keeping my eye on.
All right. Should we close out order? Move it along?
Let's do it.
All right. I'm going to jump in right away. My only complaint about order is that my old eyes keep thinking that the order symbol is the chaos symbol.
Well, my less old eyes also think that. So I don't think it's just you.
All right.
I look at them and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a chaos. No, wait, that's order.
Some kind of halo.
Especially on some of these where I'm like, that would be great on this 4-band, and then oh, never mind.
Yeah. Themes on these guys. They definitely have guard going on.
Guard is certainly their thing, and I think that's kind of always been Order's thing, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, all the way back to the very first, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like not Stormsire, Steelheart.
Yeah.
Steelheart was about the guard.
All about the guard and trying to survive and be tougher than everybody else, but maybe not actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they got guard tokens. They've got some like friendly fighters being in enemy territory stuff, but not like just crazy aggressive stuff. It's like just for being there, you get some rewards, which is
right.
Interesting, I guess. I don't know. It's an interesting mixed bag. I think the guard token stuff, though, is definitely the strongest theme that we see.
Mm-hmm. People who might be down for some of that, I can say that Miari's is kind of about it a little bit. I think they even have an objective in there that will score them if they get all on guard, etc. So,
Yeah.
but they have enough, like especially inspired. Once they're inspired, they're all of them are on 2 dice. They got a couple on dodge that care about it, and so uh, there's plenty of war bands in the mix there that are interested in this sort of. They wouldn't be sad to have some extra guard stuff going on. Even uh, even Blade Coven, like guard,
Yeah.
they get to 2 dodge, and they benefit quite a bit from being on guard.
I think anybody who has multiple defense dice or wants to be able to not get pushed off of hexes is going to care about being on guard, and especially ways to get on guard from ploys can be
Mm-hmm.
very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting. It's a tough mechanic to think of. Like, all right, guard. I guess like that's a thing. Like it's generally useful and particularly useful to some specific war bands.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's not a ton of stuff that tends to score off of it, but positioning wise, so
Yeah. Yeah, I think we used to see a little bit more of that. I think it
yeah.
rotated out in Beast Grave pretty much completely. I don't know that any of these are very strong either. Like, they're not bad, obviously, but like I don't think there's anything that really jumps out to me.
Yeah.
Um
There's a little bit of a cooperation theme as well. So
yeah, that's true.
um, cards like Drill Sergeant. If this fighter has no move or charge tokens, friendly fighters that begin a move adjacent to this fighter have +1 move for the duration, and friendly fighters that begin an attack action adjacent to this fighter have +1 dice.
I like that one.
It is cool. You can clearly imagine some of your ranged warbands. Um, if you can really finesse your positioning, probably with something like Soundless Step or uh, Duelist Speed,
Yeah.
then you have the potential to kind of set up some of this stuff a little more. But I think I always imagine this being pretty nifty in Thundrick, where you charge somebody, land them next to Thundrick, and then all of a sudden they're firing an extra dice.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think Thundrix probably is the best place for it, and I mean, it's even in the art. So I think they probably
sure.
thought about that. I mean, right, and they have low move to start with, so this helps them if they need to get in a position. This also helps them if they've just turtled up in your
Mm-hmm.
territory and you decide you're just going to take lots of pot shots, which I've been thinking more about that lately. That everyone's so like charge in kind of aggressive that you could probably take advantage of them. They're another one of the war bands that I just don't think about that much, but I
Yeah.
bet you that they could be pretty strong right now, but I don't think anyone's playing them.
Yeah, I did a little work with them. I ended up with a lot of surges that were dice roll dependent.
Yeah, it's a little rough.
So things like headshot where you need a crit, or steady aim where you need all successes. There's some stuff in there like that, um, that sometimes is great and sometimes is incredibly frustrating. But
Yeah.
um, another cooperation one, and again, like I like that they kind of lean, like when you, I don't know, like when you're doing just broad universal cards, you can do a little flavor by who you choose to put in the art on a given card, who
Mm-hmm.
you choose to quote. But I like that we keep coming back to this with these Grand Alliance cards, that they're able to like give some of that background flavor to the game. One of these teamwork ones that I thought was cool is Cautious Maneuver.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Reaction: play this after a friendly fighter's move action. Choose another friendly fighter that is a hunter or is on guard. That fighter makes a move action. After that move action, the two fighters must be adjacent. This is a way to potentially move somebody who's already charged. So you can
Yeah.
pull somebody back out of danger, or I, as I alluded to earlier, I was kind of goofing around with some Far Strider builds. You could potentially use this to like charge somebody up and then move your, pull them even further, get them at the last minute into enemy territory, and then get your inspirations off. I don't know. Bring some supports in. There's there's a lot of tricks to this, and it's just there's a lot of also restrictions. So it's one of
Mm-hmm.
those cards that at the end of the day, if you haven't yet put sidestep in your deck, maybe that's the maybe that's the smarter play here. But this is the one that gets you sort of mad science thinking, you know.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, there are certain war bands where a full extra move is going to be a big deal, and you could really catch somebody off guard.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, like, Skaith coming flying in from 5 hexes away to suddenly be
Boo.
able to just start kicking everybody, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, now he doesn't have a charge token, and he's able to just go ham. Or even just like allowing a slow fighter to get an extra move
Yeah.
can be a big deal. So
Yeah. It has a weird synergy with another sort of cooperation one. This is shared glory, an upgrade. When a friendly fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, if this fighter was supporting that fighter, gain 1 spent glory point. Uh, this is this is a card that Tough Skull somewhere is wishing that didn't have an order symbol on it.
yeah,
You just stand in the middle of the Cunning Crew and farm glory.
for sure, man. Talk about another instance of like good thing this is gated. Cunning Crew would go nuts if they had
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
But you can also see that this is a something that they probably thought a lot about and wanting to have a way to continue to have a way to gain additional glory, but not wanting it to get out of hand like it did
mm.
way back in Shadespire days when, well, and
Tome
then
of Offerings.
yeah, and then you get Tome of Offerings as well, so then it's not even faction restricted,
Yeah,
and it just got nuts because it was like, hey, Mollog smashing people for 2 glory a pop.
yeah.
Um,
God, can you remember there was a day, listeners, when Tome of Offerings was in the game and unrestricted.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Everybody it was everywhere. Uh, Man, escalation with Tome of Offerings and all sorts of stuff. Um, but like this is so much tamer, but still
Yeah,
good. Like
yeah,
getting 2 glory off of a kill is still really good. It's just you don't get the extra upgrades off of the kills.
yeah,
You still have to set it up. Like it's not just go get a kill, get an extra glory. So
yeah,
I really like that. And like you said, you can make this work if you pair it with some of these other stuff. And I always like having, like, I know it's not really probably the best, but I do like having little combos built into decks to be like, oh yeah, if I get these 2 cards at the same time,
yeah,
all of a sudden, like, it's so much better. Um, it's definitely cool.
yeah. Any other order cards that you wanted to touch on here?
Yeah, so I kind of like land grab just because it's a multi push. I just really get hung up on the restriction. So it says you can push up to 2 friendly fighters up to 2 hexes, which obviously that's great. But then after each push, they must be in no one's territory.
I'll tell you why I think this is so up to 2 is kind of nice because it could just work
Could
with
just be
one.
one. Yep.
I think what busts this is the prevalence, how often you're going to see longboards. And on longboards, there are exactly 2 hexes that are in
Yeah, I
no
know,
one's
right?
territory. So,
It
uh,
like man, it feels like it could be so good, and then you know that it's just never really going to work out because there's not enough landing spots.
yeah,
But like there are plenty of war bands that would love to be able to have a push 2 friendly fighters 2 hexes
yeah,
that are not Starblood Stalkers because they already have that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. If this, oh, yeah, exactly. If this was like towards no one's territory, I wonder if it
Oh
would be
yeah.
busted.
Man, I still don't think it would be busted because like if you're in enemy territory, then it would have to be backwards.
Yeah,
And if it's just to get you moving forwards, then that's fine.
yeah,
I I don't know.
mm.
I'm sure they looked at it and they probably started with just push 2 friendly fighters 2 hexes and were like, this is too good.
Too much.
Too
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, this maybe tastes like something that got modified kind of late in the, and then accidentally
yeah.
got a little toned down too much. I bet you there was a version of this that was more powerful and it got trimmed down.
Yeah. That'd be my guess.
Sure.
I don't know that there's much here worth mentioning in the objectives. I don't know, like maybe ordered reality could be scoreable sometimes. Like you scored an end phase for 1 glory if one or more of your opponent's illusions were broken, or each of your friendly fighters has the same number of upgrades.
Yeah.
Like maybe, but
It's
um, it's kind of
it is
weird.
a card. It is. I dislike it mostly for it messing with my idea that chaos is the one that's interacting with illusions. Honestly, we kind of glossed over some of that already. I think a lot of these warbands have some of their specific cards here have mentioned illusions in some way. Um, yeah, depending on how prevalent illusions get, this could end up being like just kind of almost an auto score. I don't think they'll ever be that common. And the other one is just probably a little bit too hard work for just a 1 glory end phase.
Yeah.
I think you have to be pretty desperate to make yourself work that hard. The
Mm-hmm.
thing is the one side that might be I didn't have to work at anything, and the other is that like I had to work kind of hard for
Yeah.
not much reward.
Which I
So
feel like is a lot of how the hybrids tend to end up anyway.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. I think when we talked about path order on it earlier, we had a listener pointed out when we were talking about the
Mm-hmm.
hold style. It may be a late inclusion in hybrid flexi deck. I
Yeah.
guess I haven't mentioned this. As listeners probably know, I have a soft spot for the symmetry of things. So having a path of death, path of chaos, path of order, path of destruction is satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
So I
It
like
is,
that. But
it is definitely nice. I think as I've sort of thought about the card more, I think I've actually like gotten further away from liking it.
mm,
um, I think the two enemy fighters dead piece is going to be tougher in some matchups than you'd like.
yeah, I
Um,
think it's a meta read. Like if you think elite warbands are having a hard time and you're seeing more fours, five, sixes, then
mhm.
feels better. But anytime you have a card that says two guys got to be dead, uh, and you got to say like, well, does Crushes ruin this for me? The
Yep.
Crushes probably ruins this for me. So
Almost certainly.
yeah, yeah. All right, I think we kind of covered them. Any other thoughts on order specifically?
Uh, just that I feel like if they're gonna lean so hard into this guard thing, then like give us a way to score off of that too, or
Sure.
like make it sort of like um with what were some of the they had some in Shadespire for Steel Hearts where it was like if all your fighters have no wound counters or something,
Mm,
uh like if the whole point is being defensive, then like let's lean into that. And I
mm.
know that people get super upset anytime there's passive scoring, but like being defensive to that extreme is very difficult. So like if that's the game plan, then sure, I'd be fine with it and I would, but I'm fine with passive play in general. I
Yeah.
think I think it's healthy to have a mix of fighting styles, and while the get in the middle and smash faces works right now, it's very balanced. I feel like you don't necessarily want the game to become too homogenized.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Well, all right. Uh, all four grand
Yeah.
alliances have been analyzed here. Um, any thoughts going forward? So we know that we're getting uh, objective gambit upgrade for each. Um, maybe threw out some thoughts about what would be there. Do you think we're going to see it in future seasons?
I do.
Yeah,
Um how useful they'll be, how much we'll see them get played, I that is much harder, I think, to say. If they continue to be sort of at this power level, um, I do think that they will be fairly limited in their use. You might see them show up every once in a while in very specific builds, which I think is fine.
hmm
Um, and I mean, it would I think it'd be okay. I think if they wanted to push these a little harder, you could have one or two in here that basically become staples. Like I don't think
Mm,
that's a problem. Like stuff competing with things out of the universal, the essentials pack, I think would be perfectly fine.
yeah.
I don't know that we necessarily need the essentials to feel like truly to their namesake that you must play cards out of this
Sure.
pack.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I would be perfectly happy with seeing them get even a little better than they currently are.
Yeah. I agree. I think we're going to see them. I think we talked about reasons why early on. I think just managing your managing that many war bands, it just makes sense as a step to do. I'd be curious to see. There's been a lot of discussion about Rivals Plus, which is
Ooh, yes.
take your Rivals deck, add either add cards from pick one Essentials or one of the other existing um,
Mm.
Rivals decks like Illusory Might or the Silent Menace. I wonder if there would be one where it'd say, or another option is your own Rivals deck plus anything you want from your Grand Alliance, something like that. So,
Yeah, I could see that. I
um,
think I think that could be very good. I think the stuff in here is pretty well balanced across the board. Like,
sure.
there's obviously a few outliers, but I don't think that's terrible.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think you look harder at this. I mean, some of these things that are kind of borderline, if you're working with a more restricted card pool, then all of
yeah,
a sudden you look a little closer at them. So,
absolutely.
yeah. Um, any more thoughts about Grand Alliance cards, about Grand Alliance divisions?
Yeah.
How about this? Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down.
I think thumbs up. I think
Yeah,
generally, I think this is going well. Very early days, but I think they're on the right track. You?
yeah, I think so. I think it's going to feel better when the universal pool isn't quite as limited as it is now. Uh, I don't know for sure if that's going to happen or not, but you might think so. It kind of depends on what they decide to do. We've got one more warband in this question mark season question mark,
Yeah.
and then a starter set comes. I can't imagine they're going to rotate all of Dire Chasm and just leave us with this
No,
very limited pool.
that would be.
Um,
I think that's almost guaranteed to not happen.
sure,
We would have a very poor championship format. I think if they did that.
yeah. If that does happen, then being split into grand alliances is kind of a problem. But I like that it. I like the potential that it frees them up. I like that um, they I think they erred on the side of like making them not too powerful, which is if you had to pick one or the other, it's probably the better way to go. I'm not sure. And then I think as they kind of I don't know sort of bracketed in, titrated into the right amount, I think it's going to give them more options going forward. So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. And to the like where they sort of landed in terms of like caution, I think the more important thing, at least for me, is that it feels like they erred on the side of flavor rather than
Mm,
power.
yes. Yeah.
And I think the most offensive thing that they could have possibly done is have these be extremely boring cards, even if they were
Mm,
all really powerful. Like if they were all just like great strength,
hmm.
yeah, everyone would use them, but it'd be super boring. Like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't feel like they were a Grand Alliance. Like
Yeah.
they tried to be very thematic and sort of push to say like what like how are we going to define these greater groups of warbands, and I think they did
Hmm.
a fairly good job of that. Maybe death was a little hard to corral, but uh, I think that's just because they designed them in a lot of directions. It's
Yeah.
hard to try and make them come together, but
Yeah.
they feel like they belong, and I think that is a very good thing.
All right. Well, unless you got anything else, I think that's going to do it for us today.
Yeah.
Um, so we will say thank you to GW. Some of the cards we've reviewed here are part of we get one of each thing as a review copy, and that's appreciated. Helps us get the reviews out and such. If you want to talk to us, you can do so at WTHcast or whatthehexcast@gmail.com. You can also come chat with us on the Discord. We've got plenty of people. It's kind of our greater podcast network. All get together there and chat about what have you. If you want to check out more of that network, you can do that on themortalrealms.com. Path to Story, they are the Path to Glory podcast that's going on, as in not Path to Glory, the Path to Story, the Path to Glory podcast, not Path to Glory, the Warhammer Underworlds podcast, is on our network. And the story phase going strong. I think coming up pretty soon there, they'll be covering the new Fire Slayers Battle Tome. Are you in on that one? I don't know if you're on that one. I don't think you are. I think it's probably me and Paul.
I don't really think I've got the time for it, although it sounds pretty interesting from some of the previews they've shown of some of the new stuff that's coming. It seems like it's going to be Magmadroth Central here pretty soon.
But thanks to the Greater Network for being a place that we can be. Coming up, we got maybe one episode. I got to check the exact timing. I think there's just one episode that's going to drop, and then another one that we'll probably have to record right before Adepticon.
Probably.
So we'll have to put a couple in the hopper, and I'm going to have a kind of crazy month of March. So we'll see what we can do. We do have some recommended listening, and that would be from band The Grand Alliance. And since we're in Harrowdeep, we're going to pick the track Swim. Little funky number for you. So check it out if you like. Otherwise, for What the Hex, I've been Davy.
And this is Phil.
Oh, I was like, how does Shaka Khan have a song called The Grand Alliance? It's Chakra Khan. So, keep that stuff in the story phase. Those kind of
D-list, like off brand. Shaka Khan.
Little search engine hijacking, trying to jump on. Yeah, exactly. Like it's the touring. Coming to a casino near you, Chakra Khan.
Yep.
I'm gonna put this in the notes, and like somebody's gonna be irate, like Chakra Khan's my favorite band, man. How could you?
It's the best. You don't even know.